Hi guys, it's Sarah. Welcome to Common Ground Podcast. I know you guys are typically used to seeing Kinza here, but she recently has moved to San Francisco for a job offer. And so in the meantime, we will be sharing hosting duties. And so I will be co-hosting for a little bit. And so welcome to the podcast. And today we are going to have our good friend of the podcast and fan of the podcast, Giovanni, here.
Yes, hello everybody.
And today we are going to talk about mass shootings in America and viewing it from a social media lens. So we'll be analyzing some tweets and videos that have kind of gone viral. And so let's get started in this conversation.
The people in the government who are voted into power are lying to us. And us kids seem to be the only ones who notice and are prepared to call BS. Companies trying to make caricatures of the teenagers nowadays, saying that all we are is self-involved and trend-obsessed, and they hush us into submissions when our message doesn't reach the ears of the nation. We are prepared to call BS. Politicians who sit in their gilded House and Senate seats funded by the NRA telling us nothing could have ever been done to prevent this. We call BS. They say that tougher gun laws do not decrease gun violence. We call BS. They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. We call BS. They say guns are just tools like knives and are as dangerous as cars. We call BS. They say that no laws could have been able to prevent the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred. We call BS. That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS.
And that was Emma Gonzalez, student of Stoneman High School after the aftermath of the Parkland, Florida shooting that was devastating. And really this whole conversation of gun reform has followed. And as you can see, she kept yelling this mantra, we call BS.
Right.
It's really interesting because her and a couple of other students went on the Ellen DeGeneres show.
Right.
And Ellen commented on the fact that she was like, you were so brilliant. She's like, how did you come up with this we call BS line? And then she explains it, but she says, it was so intelligent of you to make it not actually say bullshit, but to say BS, because she's like, no major television network can now bleep you out.
Agreed.
Right? She's like, you get to say the entirety of your speech with such vigor and have people really feel what you're saying. But she was like, you kept this integrity about it. And anyways, applauded her. And I think we all do.
Yes. For
that amazing speech. What is your reactions watching that?
Rightfully so. You know, that this conversation moves to the forefront of politics, and it's about time. I mean, you know, numerous shootings. I believe this was the 19th school-related shooting in the U.S. in 2018. It's been 2 months. That's ridiculous. You know, so, you know, they always say it's too soon. Don't politicize this. But, you know, it's easy to say that behind a desk, but when it affects you personally,
exactly.
I believe it's, you know, if they want to talk about it, then how can it be too soon if they're the ones that are suffering, you know?
Absolutely.
Victims.
And I think that it's upsetting because we've seen mass shootings happen in the past. And I think a lot of kind of political scientists maybe are trying to understand what is it about this particular mass shooting in Florida that gained this momentum. It's really in terms of really calling for gun reform in politics and in DC.
Right.
What has it been that it's really provided this mass momentum? And I've been thinking about it, and in times before in other shootings, we've seen the families of the victims really coming out and advocating, right? Being the advocators when it comes to, you know, lobbying and in capitals and all this stuff. But now you see it's like children, it's high schoolers, it's the kids that actually were there at the scene of the crime.
Right.
And they're the ones whose faces are now going to become the people that are advocating for these changes. And it's really upsetting and kind of sickening, but necessary that apparently it had to be children's faces that were going to lead this cause.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between what we've seen in the past and what's happening now.
Yeah, I believe, I think really this was a culmination of just pressure spilling over. Mm-hmm. And eventually this was going to happen. I mean, you can only take so much before, the can blows, as they say. So I think this was a culmination of all that. The momentum's been there ongoing, like you said, from parents. Usually it's the parents of the victims or adult members of Congress or of any reform party, and now you see the kids getting into it. And I think not to get too political, but I think the culmination of Donald Trump's presidency, this whole just everything going on in the last couple of years, the frustration, everything's building up, and eventually it was going to pop.
Yeah.
And this was popped.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think that, an issue like this hits a critical mass.
Yes.
I think it's finally hit that.
I think so.
And it kind of, it's so upsetting what had happened that a shooting like this is what culminated change or even a movement like this. But it's accurate. I mean, people always say, like, what has to happen before? Like, how many more people have to get killed before?
And that's always a narrative after every single shooting.
Mm-hmm. And follow this loop.
It's a loop. It's first it's too soon. Mm-hmm. Let's not politicize this. Mm-hmm. And then it's the people on the other side saying how many more mass shootings, how many more victims, and then it just happens all over again in a cycle.
Right. Exactly. And the thing is, I was watching this New York Times video that they posted on their Facebook page, and they talked about, what's different also about this year is that it's a voting year.
Yes.
Agreed. And that's important. And because they were questioning, it's awesome that, Emma Gonzalez and her, people from her school and the teachers, they have this amazing team behind them to lead this movement. And they've organized a march in Washington for this. They clearly have plans to keep this going.
March 24th.
When is it?
24th.
March 24th, they have their march in Washington planned. And so this month, and I'll be watching and hopefully participating in a way that I can from afar. But the New York Times video really questions, like, how, we've seen it happen with movements in the past. Like, how are they going to sustain their momentum? And they said, well, the fact that it's a voting year is really on their side in terms of carrying this to, like, even the end of the year.
It's very unfortunate to say, but it's, it's, how can I say this? It's, the fact that this happened in a voting year may be not the only reason, but is definitely a stronger reason for momentum to continue into the current voting cycle.
And I think it's awesome to hear that, like, we could actually make significant change in
reform
in that area where we've seen just mass shootings come from. And I think I would really want to actually watch, I don't know if you have seen it, but I think you have, because it's a fairly viral clip. It's when one of the other students from the Florida high school at the town hall meeting with Marco Rubio.
Yes, I did see this.
Kind of
really laid into him.
Yeah, laid it on him. And I think it's essentially, what any of us and any of our other friends would probably say to Marco Rubio's face.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the most diplomatic way.
It's what needs to happen. I mean, nothing will ever change unless these politicians are called out. Yeah. I mean, gun reform has been lacking in the U.S. for too long.
For too years. Long. And I think that the way he even went about, talking to Marco Rubio, I think what's important there is we've seen parents talk to senators and legislators, but the difference in this conversation, again, was the difference in age, the generation. It was a high school student having this conversation with a grown-ass man.
It shows maturity, and it shows not only that kids or high schoolers can not only partake in this conversation, but be a part of it. Not just because they're still in high school doesn't mean that, that you always hear the narrative from the far, they don't understand politics. Right. You don't need to understand politics.
You need to understand humans.
Exactly. Just to understand gun violence.
Exactly.
So.
And it's, once you understand how humans work and humans operate, that's when you can make a compromise and reasonable change.
Right.
Because really what anyone asks for in this conversation, and I'm sure even the families of the victims that experience this horrific crime, not just in Florida, but I mean in Sandy Hook, in Columbine, like we can go all the way back.
All the way back, Columbine. Yeah.
Right? And all they're asking for is like
Change.
Reasonable gun reform.
Significant change.
Like why the hell do we have kids of 18-year-olds able to purchase assault rifles?
Yeah, semi-automatic assault rifles. It's unheard of.
Right. And I think that now we're seeing significant change. We're seeing conversation and dialogue, and that's always going to be the first step.
Right.
To that conversation and any kind of change.
Not only conversation and dialogue, but a continued effort of conversation and dialogue. Yeah. Like we were talking about the loop earlier, usually the conversation dies out because one, mass shootings happen so often in this country that it's like we forget about the other one because a new one already happened, and it's like, well, we got to talk about this now. You know, the way the news cycle works, it's old news. You know, you got to talk about new news.
Exactly.
So the fact that these kids are doing this, the high schoolers are doing this, that the community's doing this, I feel like that it's staying in the current news cycle. You hear something new about it every day. That's what's the momentum that's going to keep pushing. And
do you think, I'm curious what your opinion is on how you believe like that march that they have planned on Washington, March 24th. How do you think that's going to play out? Like, do you think there's going to be a strong turnout demographics wise? Do you think it's going to be a lot of like, children and just young people? Who do you think are going to be representing?
I mean, I hope, many people turn out. I think it's important. Just what I'm seeing on social media, play out, and I read all these comments. I definitely think it's going to be a strong turnout. I definitely believe a lot of children, high school children, maybe teenagers, definitely turn out. Definitely a lot of young adults. Yeah, I believe.
I think so too.
A lot of young adults, early 20s maybe.
Hell yeah.
And I definitely think it's going to be a strong turnout, a much needed turnout. And I think it's already, these kids are already making waves. They're already, not only with the march, they're already making the waves.
I agree.
Why did you choose to destroy your gun?
So over time, I came to the conclusion that people don't really need semi-automatic weapons. And also, I was sort of starting to advocate against other people having them and realized that it was sort of hypocritical that I still had one as well. So I thought the best thing to do would be to get rid of it.
As we're sitting here talking on national TV, we're not sharing your location because it's my understanding.
I appreciate that.
You got it. Because after posting the video of you destroying your gun, you have been getting all kinds of threats. Can you just tell me what kind of threats, how bad they are?
What's really concerning about this actually is that all of the pro-gun people, the hardcore pro-gun people, are saying that it's not the gun's fault. It's just because our world is not respectful enough. People don't respect each other anymore. And then they go on social media and they bash me and they say, I hope that someone breaks into your house and has a gun and you realize why you needed that gun. Or they question my mental fitness because of my brother's suicide or something, So there's just terrible, terrible things. Yeah, it's really disconcerting. I don't take it personally because it's social media, and social media is a really interesting animal. But at the same time, it's concerning that that's the mindset of the Hive, and I think that that's something that we really need to change on social media.
Discussing a little bit about how after the Parkland shooting, a lot of gun owners have actually started making these YouTube videos and sharing them destroying their guns as a means to really show like unification in that like we're on this we're about our Second Amendment, right? But we don't think that trumps these children's right to live and to go to school in a safe place.
Right.
The whole point of these people making these videos of like showing them destroying their guns is that because we always hear the argument on the other side that responsible gun owners should have the right to keep their guns, enjoy their guns. I have a very personal opinion about that. I don't think it's relevant to this. I'm going to not try and make that the point of this conversation. But listen, if people want to enjoy their guns, they can enjoy it for their own personal reasons.
Right.
I have to like hold myself back from even trying to like trigger myself right now by saying that. But, it's responsible gun owners, do you? But by them making these videos, I think also is a means the people that are, you know, shown on the left to be all, you guys want to control everything we do. It's like, no, we want you guys to enjoy what you have, but
responsibly and
do
not
responsibly.
and not at the cost of human lives.
Right. And it's like, you know, it's not, I mean, what she was saying, the kind of people that have criticized her for the decision that she made for, you know, making that video or whatever it was, is that they're, you know, it's the hive mentality
right.
of, you know, people believing that like, oh no, like they're not going to be fine with their guns and this and that. But it's like, we're trying to take away guns from people that are unfit to carry them.
To carry. That's a very important distinction that I think gun owners and people who are just so,
and it's people that are mentally
maniacal about keeping, you know, thinking that someone's trying to take their rights away. It's like they don't understand. It's like, we're not trying to, or people who are on the other side of discussion are not trying to reform and change your right to bear arms.
Yeah,
we're trying to reform the way guns are purchased, background checks, which are mental health checks, domestic abuse charges. I mean, is it so hard that
it's commonsensical?
It's commonsensical, exactly.
And if that's the kind of, I think, the hurdle by like parties are facing, and then that's why it's become a bipartisan issue, is because there's this hurdle in between of the dialogue in and of itself is getting wrapped up in words and yes. what we're titling it. But it's like, no, we really are just trying to make it a rational approach.
Right.
All right, so now we're going to look at some tweets that President Donald Trump himself sent out. This first one that we're going to read was tweeted out on May 21st, 2016. Crooked Hillary said that I want guns brought into the school classroom. Wrong. This was said in 2016, and if anyone's been following the news and watching videos and conversations he's been having, let's fast forward to 2018. He tweeted this out February 22nd, 2018. I never said, quote, give teachers guns, end quote, like was stated on fake news at CNN and at NBC. What I said was to look at the possibility of giving, quote, concealed guns to gun-adept teachers with military or special training experience. Only the best, 20% of teachers, a lot, would now be able to immediately fire back if a savage sicko came to a school with bad intentions. Highly trained teachers would also serve as a deterrent to the cowards that do this. Far more assets at much less cost than guards. A, quote, gun-free school is a magnet for bad people. Attacks would end. History shows that a school shooting lasts, on average, 3 minutes. It takes police and first responders approximately 5 to 8 minutes to get to site of a crime. Highly trained gun-adept teachers, coaches would solve the problem instantly before police arrive. Great deterrent. If a potential, quote, sicko shooter knows that a school has a large number of very weapons, talented teachers, and others who will be instantly shooting, the sicko will never attack that school. Cowards won't go there, problem solved. Must be offensive, defense alone won't. Must be offensive, right? Defense alone won't work. Let's unpack this because
truly great,
there's too much to unpack.
Great grammar in English as always from our president.
I mean, okay, so one of the two things he talks about, one is this concept of arming teachers and coaches of schools on campus that are what he considers adept teachers.
Right. Well,
they're trained.
First, there's a huge contradiction between 2016 and 2018.
Oh, let's talk about that, right? Let's just talk about...
Just right off the bat, that's an obvious contradiction. I mean, you know, Crooked Hillary said, I want guns brought into the school. Wrong.
Wrong? Let's fast forward now.
And it's literally exactly what he's calling for.
That is classic Donald Trump.
I mean, there really is a tweet for everything, as they say.
And don't leave a freaking paper trail, bro. Yes. Rule number 1 for anything, and he violates that rule. Like, he loves Twitter, but Twitter. This is also what's going to, we would hope, lead to his demise. But there's too much out there just in Twitter archives that just show how inept Donald Trump is. But so where he talks about allowing concealed guns to arm teachers with and coaches and what he considers trained. And he freaking, if anyone watched that clip where he talks this through, insane. He loves the word adept. It was his new vocabulary word for the day. And he kept repeating it. So I don't know why I found that entertaining. But
just growing up in school, I would
how would you
not
feel?
Be comfortable with any of the teachers I've ever had holding a gun. It's and crazy. Also, what a special training experience needed. And how many teachers do you know were ex-military? It's definitely not 20%.
And then it's also like, then there's the second wave of concern in that the teachers that would volunteer to be armed with a gun, I think that's also concerning. It's like,
there's just too
many.
Why
are you so attracted to wanting to volunteer yourself? There's also something that's kind of psyche involved with that's concerning.
There's just too many things that can go wrong with having arms available in classrooms. And
the fact that he says that it would be a deterrent for even a potential gun shooter to think that, oh, if I'm already walking onto a campus that has, more teachers guns. Armed, that what he says, quote, never would then a potential gun shooter even try to attempt to attack that school. That's entirely false.
It's false.
Deterrents like that don't work.
They don't work. If any,
it's proven I wouldn't
say it attracts even more, but it definitely doesn't deter an attacker from.
It won't.
From a target. I mean, these teachers are not.
Well, you're already unstable if you are someone who wants to attack a school campus armed. You're already in an unstable place.
Exactly.
To think that they would engage in like rational thought to think to themselves, is it even, what's a good target for me? Like, no, these people this isn't some random school that they're choosing to attack. They have a personal tie to that school that's pulling them there to that campus to kill people.
Right. A vendetta is a vendetta, regardless of what deterrents, and I use that word in quotes because he thinks, are there. Yeah. It wouldn't matter.
So his whole argument that it's a deterrent, I think, is just a really flaky argument in and of itself. It's not convincing by any means.
I have two thoughts going through my head. One, the fact that he thinks that the underpaid educational sector of our government, underpaid teachers are willing to risk their lives and conceal weapons to deter shooters is just honestly ridiculous.
It is.
It's just laughable. I mean, you constantly hear about how underfunded our schools are, all school districts across the country, but the answer is to give these teachers who are frustrated by being underpaid without enough resources and then on top of that, overflooded classrooms. The answer is giving these people weapons.
Doesn't this also go to show that, like, this is Donald Trump's approach to problem solving, right? He goes directly for, well, let's arm these teachers with guns. No. How about let's arm these teachers with resources that are going to show them how to maybe identify a kid before he even gets to a place where he's going to come on campus and shoot and kill people.
Or maybe let's
what are the warning signs for them? Let's arm teachers with that knowledge.
Or maybe let's fund schools for mental health education or mental health.
Right. It's like, let's be able to help them identify the kids in school that are probably going to be more mentally ill. It's interesting because I watched this video recently that I'm not sure who exactly it was that administered the video, but it was after the Sandy Hook incident.
Right.
And they created this whole video about, and they teamed up with, there was all these people involved in making the film, and they had, data scientists involved and people who have, psychiatrists who gave their input on this video. And they make this whole video about, you see this kid in school, and the whole plot line is that he's like, he carved something on a desk in the library saying, I'm so bored. And then, like, I want to kill myself. Mm-hmm. And then you see the next day he comes to that same desk and someone had responded to him. So he's having this, like, conversation with this person. And then it gets to the end where he finally meets this person. And then they're in this gym and he's talking to this girl. And it's like, oh my God, like, this is adorable. And then all of a sudden someone walks in and starts shooting up the place. So everyone's like, what the hell? Like, and then they're like, let's play back this video. And they're like, you're going to notice someone in the back. And things that you missed the first time watching it around, because they're like, the shooter, they're like, was not this kid that was like carving this stuff down. And when they play back the entire video, you notice there's a kid in the back.
It's a quiet person that no one ever notices.
Yeah, he's got his headphones in. He's upset, agitated. He's reading books about guns. And then they play back the video and it makes sense. You're like, oh, those are the signs. And you realize, yeah, people, we're not educated as to like which people are going to be more sensitive to engage in that kind of behavior.
Right.
And I think that's far more important in understanding that psyche and trying to like preempt it before it gets there.
And I truly believe mental health is a giant part of this discussion when it comes to identifying it. And I think that's a different discussion. It's definitely tied together. But I feel like, again, that's another discussion that I think Donald Trump doesn't really understand. And I think this is his quick fix.
Exactly.
It's kind of like he honestly solves problems like a child would do. It's like how
he goes for he has no actual like deep decision making when it comes to that. He thinks whatever he does probably zero research.
It's like, how do we solve gun issues? More guns. It's like that's like something a determination a child would come up with.
Yeah,
and a small child, not even. Yes. I think even teenagers are smart enough to decipher the problems.
Exactly. It's upsetting to understand that this is how our president approaches even just problem solving when it comes to. And I think like his intuitions to where he goes to try and solve them speak largely to the kind of leader he is. And it's upsetting, the entire thing. But we're going to get into more of this in a little bit. But we're going to wrap up this segment. Keep watching, you guys, for more on this discussion. Thanks.